Fluttershy was enjoying a nice cup of tea. She was relishing in the taste of it. It really calmed her nerves after a long day. Angel looked up at her as she continued to sip her tea.
What is it?
She turned, taking notice of the bunny's persistent gaze. The bunny stomped his foot and swiftly pointed to the door nearby, which made Fluttershy's nerves rise once again. The bunny was urging her to go outside. She whispered nervously, her tea suddenly shaking in her hooves. Poor Fluttershy had been almost traumatized. Discord took it upon himself to reform Sombra, and Fluttershy was proud of him. Except for one minor factor. Sombra was scary. She usually could look somebody in the eyes now and address them accordingly. But the king's eyes pierced into hers, and he yelled at her so loudly. It practically put her in a state of major and constant fear. It was only about 20 minutes ago. The words still rung in her head.
Perhaps you should mind your own boundaries.
Fluttershy, at that moment, could only respond with a scared and very small squeal as she looked down, minding her own boundaries. She remembered her legs failing her and almost toppling over a couple dozen times while trying to remain in his presence. He also got a little too close for comfort when he yelled at her. They were almost face to face and she couldn't handle it. She was so happy to be in the security of her own home, yet she still promised to help Discord.
I know, Angel. I need to help Discord. I need to put him first.
Fluttershy automatically, yet shakily, stood to her hooves. Like that, there was a knock at the door that seemed to make her confidence perish.
Who is it?
She said, trying to regain her former composure. She didn't want to be a mess in front of any pony. She wasn't afraid of a dragon, but she was afraid of Sombra. How odd. She walked to the door, but before she knew it, the door flung open.
Fluttershy!
The familiar voice rang in her ears, and she looked expectantly.
Sombra doesn't want to be my friend. He keeps hissing at me and yelling. I don't like it.
Discord said with a frown to Sombra.
Really, you think he'd love to learn the best from the best? Just because I wasn't crowned the Princess of Friendship, even though I should have been, doesn't mean I'm not the best at the matter. But he isn't listening. He keeps talking about—
Let me go! When I am released, you will be the first to be my slave.
Sombra growled at Discord, which made Discord just snicker lightly.
This is not amusing,
the king said, his eyes piercing into Discord's. On the other hoof, Fluttershy had frozen up. She was barely moving.
What's wrong with the yellow pony who can speak to rodents?
Fluttershy was just frozen in time. The only signal of life was her occasional breaths.
Fluttershy?
Discord lightly poked her, which snapped her back into reality, but her eyes avoided even gazing upon Sombra.
Do something kind. Maybe that'll affect him.
Fluttershy broke from her chains of fear momentarily and walked over to her small table. Discord put Sombra down, but reassured that he wouldn't escape.
Tea?
Fluttershy said nervously, gesturing to the piping hot cup of tea she just poured Sombra, and the king arched a brow and walked over.
You don't have to. I was just offering. Don't force yourself.
Fluttershy said quickly with a very panicked tone. Sombra stared with half-lidded eyes, his emotion shielded within him.
It's been quite a long time since I've been able to enjoy a cup of tea.
Discord watched curiously, not wanting to intervene quite yet as he learned his lesson on barging in on things. Sombra took a sip of the tea. His expression didn't change, but Fluttershy leaned in eagerly, watching him carefully take in the liquid, hoping for the utmost positive reaction.
Not bad, honestly. I have had better, but it is not terrible.
Sombra said with a sigh, sitting down.
So, what was it like? Being a king? You know.
Fluttershy tried to start the conversation, but it seemed like her animals took an interest in Sombra, as he fed the smaller animals nuts and such. Fluttershy stared in awe, automatically relaxing like pounds of weight had just been lifted off of her. If he had been kind to her animals, maybe they could start off on the right hoof.
Oh, you like animals?
Fluttershy said with a soft smile.
Yes, animals do not judge you.
Sombra said with piercing eyes, but he seemed to calm down.
When I was a lad, they were the only companions to attend me.
He said with a low tone. For once, not as vicious as intended. He didn't like Fluttershy, but the presence of the animals did soothe him.
Oh, I get that so much. When I was a filly, they were my only friends too. Other than Rainbow Dash, of course.
Fluttershy said delicately. Sombra and Fluttershy had already connected over something. Discord was still watching. Somehow he kept quiet, probably because his jealousy was boiling over inside him. He promised to stand back, but really, watching her give all this attention to this other pony did stir something within him. Of course, he had asked her to, but this still made him quite furious about the whole situation.
Oh? Well then, I suppose animals are truly the beings of this planet that are gifts that we do not deserve.
Discord had grabbed Sombra.
What are you doing?
Sombra hissed. Discord didn't want Fluttershy to make a new best friend, even if the two had barely talked.
I'm taking you out for more friendship lessons,
Discord said, starting to walk outside. Fluttershy was taken aback. That was rather quick. She was expecting to have a full-fledged conversation with the king, but it seemed like Discord was in a hurry to get out. The jealous Lord of Chaos began to leave.
Bye, Flutters.
He said, still rushing out.
Bye, Discord. Bye, Sombra.
Fluttershy tilted her head curiously with an arched brow.
What was that about?
Angel Bunny shrugged. Sombra stared back at the cottage. He really wanted to continue that conversation. It had been a moment since he had a moment with an intellectual. I suppose he'd just have to see her around because Discord was obviously keen on taking the king somewhere he didn't want to go.
Support me on Patreon and Ko-fi. Links in the description. Thanks for listening and be sure to subscribe. Good night, every pony.